judgment. So Genesis, this is all the life of Abraham. So Genesis 19 is all concerning the calling of Abraham in his life, what challenges he went through. Genesis, the 19th chapter. Listen carefully, this is God's holy word. And there came two angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them. He bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he said, Behold, now, my lords, return in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet. Ye shall rise up early and go on your way. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the street all night. And he pressed upon them greatly. They turned in unto him, and entered into his house, and he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat. But before they lay down, the men of the city, even men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. They called unto Lot, and said unto him, Where are the men which came in to thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them. Lot went out at the door unto them, and shut the door after him. And he said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Behold, now I have two daughters which have not known a man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do ye to them as is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing. But therefore came they under the shadow of my roof. They said, Stand back. They said again, This one fellow came to sojourn. He will needs be a judge, that we will deal worse with thee than with them. And they pressed sore upon the man, even Lot, who came near to break the door. But then the men, that is the angels, put forth their hand and pulled Lot into the house to them, and shut to the door. And they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. And the men said unto Lot, Hast thou here any beside, son-in-law, and thy sons, and thy daughters, and whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of this place. We will destroy this place, because of the cry of them is waxen great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord hath sent us to destroy it. And Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, Up, get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. When the morning arose, then the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife and thy two daughters, which are here, lest thou be consumed with the iniquity of the city. And while he lingered, the men laid hold on his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his two daughters, and the Lord being merciful unto him, and they brought him forth and set him without the city. Then came to pass, when they had brought them forth abroad, that he said, Because for thy life, look behind thee, neither stay home in all the plain, escape to the mountains, lest thou be consumed. And Lot said unto them, Oh, not so, my lord. Behold, now thy servant hath found grace in thy sight, and thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast shown unto me in saving my life. And I cannot escape to the mountains, lest some evil overtake me and I die. Behold now, this city is near to fire, to flee unto, and it is a little one. Or let me escape thither. Is it not a little one, and my soul shall live? And he said unto them, See, I have accepted thee concerning this thing also, and I will not overthrow the city, for the which thou hast spoken. Haste thee, escape thither, for I cannot do anything till thou be come thither. Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. The sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered Zoar. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and the plain, and all the inhabitants of the cities that which grew on the ground. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. And Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he stood before the Lord. And he looked towards Sodom and Gomorrah, and toward the land of the plain, and behold, and lo, the smoke of the country went up as the smoke of a furnace. And it came to pass, when God destroyed the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abraham, and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, which he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelt. So reads the word of the Lord. Let's pray and ask that the Lord opens our hearts and our minds. Lord, open your word to us that we may see, that we may understand, that we may trust more in you, that we may know you more, and we will live ever more closely to thee. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. If we think today is bad, we think our day is bad, this is the time of Abraham. And look at the state of these cities of the plain. We know this is the life of Abraham. Abraham was called by God. He was promised he'd have an heir, but Lot went with him. Remember, Abraham, when the herds increased and they had to divide, Abraham let Lot choose which part of the land he wanted, and Lot chose the plain, the fertile plain, the cities of the plain, Sodom, Gomorrah, and the other cities, and Abraham chose the other not so good parts. And in chapter 18, the Lord appeared to Abraham, and we have three visitors. We have the Lord and two angels. They come to Abraham and they tell him of the plan that they're going to destroy the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities of the plain. They're going to destroy them because the cry of those cities, the sin, has ascended to the Lord. And the Lord always judges in his time and in his way. He always judges. He's also promised that very soon that Abraham and Sarah will have a son. Remember, they're very old and they don't really believe God is going to do what he says he's going to do. But they are reminded that they're going to give them a son. But the main thing here I want to look upon is the Lord telling Abraham that he's going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham sort of haggles with God to say, Lord, but if there's only, and he has this haggling where he goes down to, if there's only 5 people left, we withhold your judgment. And there's not even 5 people righteous in that city. So when we come to 19, that's a very quick summary. But in 19, we read in 19 verse 1, and there came 2 angels to Sodom at even. So when you think of angels, you're probably thinking your Christmas tree, or you're thinking hark the herald angels sing, or you're thinking Christmas times and you see angels. They're kind of pretty little things, but real angels, biblical angels, are often used by God as agents of destruction. So you would not want to meet these angels. They would not be all cheery with trumpets and harps. So these two angels come to Sodom at evening, and then Lot, we note, Abraham's nephew Lot, is sitting in the gate of Sodom. Remember, to start, we read a chapter or two ago that he pitched his tent near Sodom. Now he's in Sodom. Now he's at the gate of the cities in the ancient Near East. That's where all the elders sat. That's where all the VIPs sat. That's where business was conducted. That's where disputes were settled. So we see Lot is already one of the big guys in the city. He's already he's already a name in the city. And that's when the angels come. But do note again, when he sees them, he rises to meet them and bows himself to the ground. So he knows there's something special about these two visitors. Don't think they look like ordinary people. And this is a very serious situation. These two angels who have walked calmly into this city through the gate are going to destroy everything. He says in verse 2, "Come to my house, tarry the night, wash your feet." Notice he didn't offer to wash the feet, as Jesus did in John 13. "You shall rise up early and go on your way." You've got to go early because it's too dangerous to be in Sodom at night. If we think we live in bad days, just think of this story. Evil is evil. They say, "Nay, we will abide in the street all night." Remember, in the ancient Near East, it was unthinkable that you would leave your guests outside and not invite them into your house. Even today, hospitality in the Middle East is very important. Once someone invites you into their house and you're under their protection, it's very important. We read verse 3, "He pressed upon them greatly. They turned unto him and entered his house." And then, so they go into that. He makes them a feast, but unusually, he makes them a feast with unleavened bread. You didn't usually have a feast with unleavened bread. This is one of the few instances where we have a feast made with unleavened bread. It's a bit of a kind of doing a feast on the cheap. So anyway, they're safe in the house. And then we start seeing how bad Sodom is, how terrible this is. Remember, this is 2,500 years before the birth of Christ. Before they lay down, the men in the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house around, old and young, all the people from every quarter. So before these men had even gone to bed, word had got round, and pretty much every man, all ages, in the city, surrounded Lot's house. Why were they doing that? Was this a welcome committee? Had they brought them gifts? Had they come to welcome them? No. Look at what they say. Verse 5, "And they called upon Lot, said unto him, Where are the men which came into thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them." It's a horrible thing. This is an innuendo here. It's the Bible is using this term "know," but it's a horrible thing they want to do to these men. The Bible often, sometimes, it says this is what happened, but it puts it in not such a graphic way. And what happens? So stop and imagine the scene. Lot, he's decided he's going to live with these people. And I wonder what he's thinking. What have I done? How horrible are these people? I've got these two special visitors. I know there's something special about them. They're under my protection. And now every man of all ages from every part of the city is outside my house, baying for them to bring out those men. How horrible is that? We think we live in dark days. And Lot went out at the door unto them and shut the door after him. So to Lot's credit, when he goes out of the door and shuts the door, he's basically blocking any means of escape. So he is being quite brave here. I would have left the door open personally, and probably a window behind. But he shuts the door behind him. He's going to protect those two angels. But he knows, what's that mob going to do? So he is putting his life on the line, and the New Testament references do give Lot credit. They do give him credit. And he said, I pray you, brethren, do not do so wickedly. And then what does he do? In verse 8, behold, now I have 2 daughters which have not known a man. He says, look, I'll give you my 2 daughters. And the daughters are betrothed to 2 men, 2 husbands. And so he's putting his citizenship and respect in the community above his daughters. He's being a terrible dad. Terrible dad. He's saying, just have my daughters. Here they are, I'll send them out, but don't harm my guests. Again, can we see how horrible this is? Absolutely horrible. And he says, do ye to them as is good in your eyes. And we know the people of men of Sodom are horrible people. Only unto these men do nothing, for they have come under the shadow of my roof. So again, look at Lot's character. Verse 9. And they said, stand back. They said again, this fellow came into sojourn, and he will need to be a judge. Now we will deal worse with thee than with them. They pressed sore upon the man, even Lot, and came near to break the door. So they haven't accepted Lot. They say, you're just a sojourner, you're not really one of us. And look what they're doing. They came near to break the door. How terrifying this must have been. How awful. And then for Lot, he's thinking, I'm having a really bad day. This is really terrible. He's probably at the nadir, the low point. This is really, really terrible. And note what happens. Remember, God is only doing all of this because Lot is Abraham's nephew, and Abraham has interceded, and Abraham, wants Lot to be rescued. So God is doing this all for the sake of Abraham and the blessings upon Abraham. But notice verse 10, we have a bit of a turnaround here. But the men put forth their hand and pulled Lot into the house to them and shut the door. So those angels, there's something very powerful about that hand coming out and pulling them in. So now the angels are demonstrating their supernatural ability and power. That Lot, when he's at his worst point, thinking, well, these men are now breaking down the door. My daughters are going to get violated and probably killed. My guests are going to be violated and probably killed. This is terrible. I'm going to lose my life. Why did I choose to live in this horrible city that I knew was bad anyway? And then God in his mercy, but the men put forth their hand and pulled Lot into the house. That is the hand coming down, the supernatural hand. We don't have time to go there, but in the story of Noah, when Noah sends out the dove to fly around to see if there's any land, and the dove comes back because the dove says that there's no land, there's no trees, there's just sea and flood, so I can't land anywhere. So I either basically land in the flood, or I come back to Noah. And it's the same word when Noah puts out his hand and takes the dove back into the ark. Remember when Peter, in the storm, when Jesus said to Peter, Peter says, Lord, I'll come to you on the water. Remember, Peter walks on the water. He looks at the waves. He looks at the wind, takes his eyes off the Lord, and down he goes. And then what does Jesus do? He reaches out his hand and pulls him up. This isn't just like opening the door and please come this way. This is angelic supernatural power. Open door. Remember, those crowds of horrible people, the mob, are pressing against the door. Doesn't matter to the angel, does it? Door opens, in you come, door closes. And then what happens? And verse 11, they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. So then the angels blind this mob. Now, if I was in a mob like that, which I obviously wouldn't be, and I was blinded by angels, I think I'd call it quits. Wouldn't you think? They should have said, oh, hang on a second. We've had that door slam open. We were all pressing against it. Those two men pulled in Lot. He just seemed to disappear in a nanosecond. Then the door closed, despite us pushing. Now we're all blinded. I think I would have run away. We've run away. What do? No. So that they wearied themselves to find the door. Even after they're blinded, they are still groping for the door to break it down, to get in. Do you see the sinfulness and evil of the human heart? We do not understand. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. We don't understand. But the sin is so awful and terrible. That's why in our prayers we should be praying, to deliver us from evil, or protect us from evil, protect us from sin. And then finally, Lot, in a sense, is saved with his two daughters and his wife. And the men said, verse 12, to Lot, hast thou any besides son-in-law, and thy sons, thy daughters, and whatsoever thou hast in this city, bring them out to this place, for we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxing great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. Just remember, as we pray in prayer meetings for the world, even people aren't Christians that are treated with cruelty, horribleness, that still bothers the Lord. And he will deal with it. He will judge. There's places in Ezekiel where the Israelites made deals with enemy foreign powers, and then they broke the deal because they said, well, we're God's people, we can break. But God said, no, you have to keep your covenants, even with foreign powers. God hates all cruelty. He hates all evil. He will judge. Part of the problem of our age, and in these churches where people do horrible things, is people don't fear God anymore. Because if we feared God, we would live differently. If we really believe that if I do this, I'm crossing God. If I sin against a fellow Christian or anyone, I'm sinning against God. So the more we fear God, the more holy we will be, the more committed we will be. Because basically, don't mess with God. You can send a couple of angels to wipe out whole cities. It's not worth it. And evil people need to realize that God will judge. His judgment will come. There might be a delay, but God knows his timing is perfect. But judgment will surely come. So Lot goes out, verse 14, speaks to his sons-in-law, and of course, his sons-in-law just thought he was joking. They thought, we don't care. Didn't take him seriously. How that attitude carries on today. Verse 16, while he lingered, and when the morning arose, verse 15, the angels hastened Lot, saying, arise, take thy wife, thy two daughters, which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. So the city could be destroyed. And what does Lot do? And while he lingered, actually, maybe Sodom isn't so bad. Maybe it isn't so bad. Are we sure we want to leave, honey? He says to his wife. Do we really want to leave this place? So he's lingering. Isn't it staggering? The men lay hold of his hand. That's the angel. So again, it's that same, they just got to grab him and pull him out. It's like being on the Titanic. The Titanic was the most luxurious kind of place on earth. The luxury of the Titanic was more than any London five-star hotel or New York hotel. The food, everything was the height of luxury. And if we're all having dinner in the Titanic, well, we want to finish our dinner actually. We're only on the course number 2. And someone says, but we're sinking. Well, we've got to finish dinner first. We paid a lot of money for these tickets. How ridiculous is that? It's crazy, isn't it? And yet, the world is basically one big Titanic, isn't it? And it is sinking. God bless that evangelist, I think it was from London, who swam around the lifeboats preaching the gospel till he died. A great story. So while he lingered, the men laid hold of his hand, upon the hand of his wife and the hand of his 2 daughters. They don't want to leave this place. Someone surrounds if a mob surrounds my house in Gloucester, I'm probably going to move to, Shackwell. The Lord being merciful unto him, they brought him forth and set him without the city. Basically, they've got to drag him out. They've got to drag him out. And they're told, don't look behind. And then Lot says 18, oh, not so, my Lord, behold, thy servant hath found grace in thy sight. Basically, he says, I don't think I'm going to make it to the mountains. Can I go to this little city called Zoar, which is part of the cities of the plain that God was going to destroy? So Lot says, well, I still don't really want to leave. Can we just stay in this little village, that's destined for destruction? Maybe we could just make a home there. He still doesn't want to go. So he haggles with the angel. The angel says, okay, we won't destroy that little Zoar. And then Lot says, even he's seen these angels with their powers, and he says, I don't trust you to keep me safe, even though I've seen this. Isn't it crazy? So he escapes to Zoar. Verse 23, the sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered Zoar. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah through his angels, brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. He overthrew those cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities and that which grew upon the ground, even the grass and the plants. Sorry for you gardeners here, but it was so contaminated that even the grass was going to be burnt up. But his wife looked back from behind him, became a pillar of salt. So even Lot's wife, the scholars say she might have been from Sodom. She's looking back thinking, do we really need to go? Do we really need to go? She stops and lingers and looks back thinking, oh dear, we're going to go to the wilderness and all the goats and everything is going to be terrible. We're leaving our town, everything we've known. She just stands there looking and yearning. And of course, she gets hit by that destruction. And Abraham, remember, this is all, Abraham is the one that God's doing this for, verse 27. Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he stood before the Lord and the other 2 visitors, those 2 angels. He looked towards Sodom and Gomorrah, and there it is. The smoke is ascending. And it came to pass when God destroyed the cities of the plain, God remembered Abraham, not Lot. He's doing this for Abraham, and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelt. And this sad story ends up with Lot living in a cave. Remember, his 2 daughters getting drunk because they thought, well, we'll have no ancestors now. And a horrible story they make him drunk, and they end up fathering children by their father, Moab and Ammon. It's a terrible story. So Lot ends up thinking he made the right choice and ends up living in a cave. And that's exactly what happens when we sin. Very, very quickly, just 2 quick references to the New Testament. Luke 17:28. Jesus says, likewise, as it was in the days of Lot, they did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they builded. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained down fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. But this is Jesus saying this. People say, well, the Old Testament, God is angry. To the New Testament, it's all peace and love. But this is Jesus saying this, and he says in verse 32, remember Lot's wife. Don't look back. Don't yearn. And in 2 Peter 2:6, Peter says, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemn them with an overthrow, making them an example unto those that after should live ungodly. And delivered just, Peter, and delivered just Lot. He did have some good points. Vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked. The Lord knoweth how to deliver the godly out of temptation, and to reserve the unjust unto the day of judgment to be punished. So that's why we've got to keep on with the gospel. It's so important. Thank you, Ralph. Hand back to Pastor Mark.